Happening every minute. There are 6.3 million Google searches, reactions to 4 million Facebook posts, 360,000 posts sent on X, and 43 years, or 22.6 million minutes of content watched on YouTube. A considerable incentive exists for tech companies to understand consumer behavior and recommend content likely to increase user engagement with their platforms. Today, these companies achieve this with artificial intelligence. The content most likely to engage users and go viral is divisive content that inflames emotion, the effects of which can be seen to influence Christians negatively.
Wow, what is going on here? I wanted to come on and give a quick explanation of this video, as it is quite different from the videos we typically post on this channel. I recently completed my master's degree in data science with a focus in artificial intelligence. In that program, I developed a presentation on how AI is used to deliver content to you and why this could have negative implications for Christians. This is that presentation. Let's go.
Welcome to Hope in the Lamb, where we encourage one another with the hope we have in Jesus Christ, the Lamb of God, looking past today's turmoil to embrace God's transformative kingdom. We are a community of peacemakers, deeply rooted in faith, hope, and the love we have for God and others. Together we are confident in our King's ultimate victory. Our hope is in the Lamb.
Hello, I'm Joshua Porter, and in this episode, I will be discussing the influence of AI-driven political content curation on Christians. In 2023, there were nearly 5 billion active social media users. That's more than 60% of the world's population. Advertisers looking to gain the attention of these users spent $207 billion on social media advertisement that year, with nearly half of those dollars going to one platform in particular, Facebook, with about 3 billion active users. Therefore, a considerable incentive exists for tech companies to understand consumer behavior and recommend content likely to increase user engagement with their platforms. Today, these companies achieve this with artificial intelligence. The consequence, however, is that the content most likely to engage users and go viral, content favored by AI algorithms, is divisive content that inflames emotion, the effects of which can be seen to influence Christians negatively. I argue that the influence of AI-driven political content curation on Christians is not merely a technological issue, but a multifaceted crisis that exasperates the unethical behavior of content creators, amplifies the political polarization of Christians, and pleads for the desperate awakening of the church. Happening every minute. There are 6.3 million Google searches, reactions to 4 million Facebook posts, 360,000 posts sent on X, and 43 years, or 22.6 million minutes of content watched on YouTube. Let's think about that for a second. Since I've been speaking, 43 years worth of YouTube content was just watched. That's a colossal amount of data that no human or even vast teams of humans could effectively make sense of. It's no wonder tech companies are turning to AI. Reports show an estimated $2.1 billion will be spent on AI in the social media market in 2024, growing to $7.25 billion by 2029. To enable AI-driven content curation, social media companies collect information from hundreds of thousands of signals about user behavior, interests, preferred content type, engagement, and more to deliver relevant content to their users. Each platform employs its own set of algorithms tailored for specific signals. For instance, Facebook's algorithms consider a user's friends and connections, the attributes of the post, and how likely the user will engage with the post by reading the text or watching the video. It then develops a likelihood score that anticipates if the user will click on, react to, comment on, and/or share the post. YouTube, whose platform is used by 81% of Americans, employs artificial intelligence algorithms that successfully recommend more than 70% of all videos watched. These algorithms consider a user's watch history, viewing duration, satisfaction, and other external factors. So why are these algorithms prone to recommend negative, sensational, and divisive content? Studies show that 3 types of human biases influence our engagement with messages. First is confirmation bias. We will gravitate toward messages that confirm rather than challenge our pre-existing views. Next is in-group bias. We favor positive messages about groups we identify with and prefer negative messages about opposing groups. And then negativity bias. We inherently maintain more vigilance on threatening information than non-threatening. This means we are more likely to engage with content that confirms our pre-existing views, favors our in-group, disfavors opposing groups, or threatens our way of life. Moreover, researchers discovered that messages with hatred toward an outgroup mostly garnered reactions of anger and were the most likely to be further curated by AI. Because algorithms are mathematical equations, it would be unreasonable to view them as being good or evil in and of themselves. Therefore, we should look at the intentions of social media companies, news agencies, and politicians. Social media companies, the creators and employers of AI content curators, often find themselves at ethical crossroads. With an obligation to its shareholders, customers, and society, the competing ethics surrounding its platforms pose difficult decisions for its leaders and developers. Facebook has made numerous attempts to modify its newsfeed algorithm to show more favor to meaningful interactions between users, their friends, and family, while showing less favor to interactions that could inflame outrage. Unfortunately, after Facebook's integrity team consisting of data scientists proposed several solutions, many were rejected for fear they could reduce user engagement, thus hurting company objectives. 53% of US adults look to social media to provide most of their news intake, with the most prominent platforms being Facebook, X, and YouTube. Because of this, media outlets and politicians heavily utilize these platforms to get their content and messages in front of users. To attract more viewership, news agencies are incentivized to produce divisive content. Journalists and writers for these companies are facing the ethical dilemma of producing toxic content or risk underperforming. One media producer even admitted to posting divisive content regularly to gain high engagement in advised television programming. Politicians have also discovered the power of social media algorithms and are exploiting their abilities to attract more followers. To jive with Facebook's algorithm and gain more attention, a political party in Poland admitted to shifting the language of their messaging from equal parts positive and negative to 80% negative. A recent study followed nearly 3 million posts from members of the US Congress and various news media outlets, explicitly tracking posts with emotional language that referenced a political in-group or a political out-group, such as the examples highlighted regarding Presidents Trump and Biden. The findings of this study are striking, highlighting the incentives driving the production of divisive content to elicit the emotions and support of followers. The study found that posts involving political outgroups and which garnered expressions of outrage are considerably more likely to be further curated by AI algorithms than those involving political in-groups. For example, if a post from a media source or politician referenced a person or group from the other party, that post would have an estimated 50% higher likelihood of being further recommended by AI than a post referencing a person or group of the same party. What's more, if a similar post were to provoke comments, shares, and reactions of anger and scoffing laughter, then the likelihood of further curation by AI could be as much as 180% higher. Pastor John Mark Comer states, "The modern church is facing a crisis of discipleship. Currently, the church is undergoing a significant transformation in both its internal and external relations. The church, which once had a significant influence in politics, has now succumbed to allowing political parties to have more influence over them. Pastors, tasked with leading their congregations in following Jesus and biblical teachings, are increasingly prominent in the political realm as commentators and public personalities. This shift towards political controversy is exasperating the emotional unrest among their church members. Christians choosing to give themselves to a political party and worldly ideologies are more influenced by those things than the Bible. These entities shape their biblical view to align with the political party and ideologies they subscribe to.
I think when we start to look to a political leader to be our Messiah, that's when we get into trouble. And when we look to political leaders and we give them pass on morals and integrity and character, thinking that the way to help truth and goodness and righteousness is to make a pact with evil, I think that's very dangerous.
With Jesus as the Messiah, we are set free from fear. But if we allow anyone else to be our Messiah, we are prone to become slaves to moral panic. Moral panic is a fear-mongering tactic that news outlets and politicians use to gain a larger audience and following. It is a maliciously fueled crusade based on an overstated, sometimes false perception that something, be it a policy, person, group, or event, excessively threatens our values and well-being. Unlike the news media and politicians, when Jesus informs us of the things we can expect in this life, he also instructs us not to panic. In the book of Matthew, chapter 24, Jesus instructs us not to let anyone mislead or deceive us. He tells us of the things we should expect in this life. Yes, he says, there will be rumors and threats of wars between nations and kingdoms, famines and earthquakes, hatred, arrest, persecution, and killings of his followers, a turning away, betrayal, and hatred among his followers, false prophets who will deceive many people, rampant sin everywhere, and that the love of so many people will grow cold. But Jesus says the one who endures to the end will be saved. The only way we can endure this is to recognize that Jesus has already overcome the world and gifted us with peace of mind and heart, something the world cannot give. Unfortunately, allowing ourselves to be influenced, deceived, and enslaved to moral panic comes at a cost to our health. A growing number of teens and adults are being treated for stress and anxiety, the primary source identified as news. Because of this, psychologists are sounding the alarm on the suffering effects of consuming too much of this AI-curated content, referred to in the field as media saturation overload, headline anxiety, doom scrolling, and headline stress disorder. Doctors warn that continued exposure to headlines can damage mental health and lead to depression and even post-traumatic stress disorder. All this has direct implications for the church. Pastors struggling to communicate to the hearts of their congregants who are impacted and influenced by conspiracy theories, media, and politicians are facing increased emotional and mental health issues, leading to burnout and the desire to quit. Turning our attention back to the Bible, we can see that the Apostle Paul could foresee these very effects. He warns us that when we allow ourselves to listen to and trust in false teachings, those teachings will overtake our whole self, just as yeast in dough. A recent study surveyed Christians who identified as liberal or conservative. Participants were presented with a series of issues classified as fellowship issues, for example, immigration and taxation of the wealthy, or morality issues, such as gay marriage and abortion. With each issue, participants were asked to characterize themselves on a scale of 1 to 100, with 1 being extremely liberal and 100 being extremely conservative. Additionally, participants were asked to characterize Jesus on the same scale regarding each issue. On the issue of taxation of the wealthy, both liberals and conservatives viewed Jesus as more liberal than themselves. Likewise, regarding the treatment of illegal immigrants, both liberals and conservatives viewed Jesus to be more liberal than themselves. On the flip side, both liberals and conservatives viewed Jesus to be more conservative than themselves on the issue of gay marriage. And likewise, regarding access to abortion, both liberals and conservatives viewed Jesus to be more conservative than themselves. In summary, both liberals and conservatives agree that Jesus would be more liberal on fellowship issues and more conservative on morality issues. Could this be a clue to achieving peace with others? To look to Jesus and not ourselves? In a song of praise to the Lord, the prophet says, "You will keep in perfect peace all who trust in you, all whose thoughts are fixed on you." Why then is the church becoming so polarized, even when recognizing a disparity between the character of Jesus and their views? A polarized Christian community is now flocking to the support of political parties to resolve matters of faith, such as social compassion and moral righteousness. New tribes are gaining popularity among Christians. For example, Christian progressivism, Christian nationalism, Christian liberalism, Christian conservatism, and Christian socialism. More than ever, Christians identify with these political tribes. Research shows that 57% of churchgoers now attend churches with political like-mindedness. What's more, Christians are now more likely to marry someone from a different religion than someone from a different political party. Christians are looking to politics and law to correct moral unrighteousness, which some experts attest cannot be done. In fact, in the Bible, the Apostle Paul shows us that having a law in place won't save us or bring about the moral righteousness we desire in our world. He says, the law of Moses was unable to save us because of the weakness of our sinful nature. A couple of verses later, Paul warns us that letting our sinful nature control our minds leads to death. We should all earnestly heed Paul's words here, as a YouGov poll in 2021 showed that 62% of Americans see political violence likely to increase in the coming years. What's worse, 43% of those polled expect a civil war within the next 7 years. The effectiveness of the Christian witness is in jeopardy. While some may think the Christian witness must involve political power, a stronger argument can be made for the effectiveness of the Christian witness without the backing of political power. Pastor and Renew.org leader Paul Hugebart authored an article in which he reminds us of the witness of the earliest church, who, having no political power, still had a revolutionary witness. Specifically, Paul Hugebart summarizes 5 characteristics of the early church as mentioned by John Mark Comer in his book Live No Lies. First, the church was ethnically diverse, valuing different cultures and recognizing God's creation of all people in his image. Second, the church was economically diverse, often lifting the poor and outcasts. Third, the church was opposed to abortion and the killing of unwanted children. Fourth, the church supported sexual purity and biblical marriage. And fifth, the church opposed violence on a personal, political, and global level. Comer argues that the first 2 characteristics would be in contention with conservative ideology today. The next 2 characteristics would be in contention with liberal ideology today, and the last would be in contention with both ideologies. So, what made the early church's witness so profoundly powerful? Well, Comer argues that it was the very fact that these characteristics stood out from the cultural values and thus became a powerful witness to God's new kingdom. Have these human innovations, coupled with human sinful nature, solidified an impending doom for Christians? I argue no. Instead, it is a temporary crisis that pleads for the desperate awakening of the church. This will require alertness to the spiritual and secular forces shaping our minds and hearts. With this understanding, we can choose which platforms and messages we engage in and take back control of the AI-curated content we allow ourselves to be fed. Having employed this awareness, we may still find it impossible to escape the political strife that has a stronghold on our world. However, we are reminded that Jesus was physically present during a time of much political friction, yet he actively resisted participation in culture war politics. And so can we. We can step away and take a time out from politics, which studies show will assist in fostering less polarized political perspectives. By distancing ourselves from the impact of politicians and news media, we create space for God's guidance in our lives. Romans chapter 12, verse 2 says, "Don't copy the behavior and customs of this world, but let God transform you into a new person by changing the way you think. Then you will learn to know God's will for you, which is good and pleasing and perfect." By permitting God to transform us, we are empowered to serve as His ambassadors with a powerful witness. I argued that the influence of AI-driven political content curation on Christians is not merely a technological issue, but a multifaceted crisis that exacerbates the unethical behavior of content creators, amplifies the political polarization of Christians, and pleads for the desperate awakening of the church. In this presentation, we examined the algorithms and their inclination to recommend divisive content, the ethical considerations of companies, news media, and politicians in utilizing these algorithms and platforms, the implications for Christians, and the plea for a Christian awakening. Artificial intelligence is a powerful tool for recommending content to users. When developed and used unethically, the consequences could be severe, including mental health issues, polarization, political fighting, and an ineffective witness for God's kingdom. When developed and used ethically, the positive outcomes could include peace, well-being, cooperation, and a revolutionary witness. Regardless of how they are developed or deployed, we still have a choice of what we will engage in and let influence us. As Christians, I encourage you to heed the words of the Apostle Paul as he petitions the Christians in Colossae. He says, "Since you have been raised to new life with Christ, set your sights on the realities of heaven, where Christ sits in the place of honor at God's right hand. Think about the things of heaven, not the things of earth, for you died to this life, and your real life is hidden with Christ in God. And when Christ, who is your life, is revealed to the whole world, you will share in all his glory. So put to death the sinful, earthly things lurking within you. Have nothing to do with sexual immorality, impurity, lust, and evil desires. Don't be greedy, for a greedy person is an idolater, worshiping the things of this world. Because of these things, the anger of God is coming. You used to do these things when your life was still part of this world. But now is the time to get rid of anger, rage, malicious behavior, slander, and dirty language. Don't lie to each other, for you have stripped off your old sinful nature and all its wicked deeds. Put on your new nature and be renewed as you learn to know your Creator and become like Him. In this life, it doesn't matter if you are a Jew or a Gentile, circumcised or uncircumcised, barbaric, uncivilized, slave or free. Christ is all that matters, and He lives in all of us. Since God chose you to be the holy people He loves, you must clothe yourselves with tender-hearted mercy, kindness, humility, gentleness, and patience. Make allowance for each other's faults, and forgive anyone who offends you. Remember, the Lord forgave you, so you must forgive others. Above all, clothe yourselves with love, which binds us all together in perfect harmony, and let the peace that comes from Christ rule in your hearts. For as members of one body, you are called to live in peace and always be thankful. Let the message about Christ in all its richness fill your lives. Teach and counsel each other with all the wisdom He gives. Sing psalms and hymns and spiritual songs to God with thankful hearts. And whatever you do or say, do it as a representative of the Lord Jesus, giving thanks through Him to God the Father. References will be in the description. Thank you.